About a month ago, Lucid Automotive released their new luxury four-door sedan to the world, the Lucid Air. With a 517-mile range, the Air is the longest range EV in the world. And the day before they launched the Air, Mr. Elon Musk himself took a jab at the CEO of Lucid, his own former chief engineer of the Model S program, Peter Rawlinson. Now, Elon said that Peter left Tesla just when things got tough, adding that he didn't make any contributions to the powertrain, the battery, or the electronics. Now, I find all that pretty interesting, so I went straight to the source and spoke with Peter Rawlinson in person. And what I found out is that it's Lucid's powertrain, battery, and electronics that set them apart from Tesla. And today, we're gonna figure out how they did it. Let's go. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring today's episode of Bumper to Bumper. And I think we can all agree it's been a weird year. So I've been trying out a bunch of new creative activities to break up my day. And Skillshare has made it easy to try and learn all these new things. Does anyone else see this piece of garbage over here? I've also been learning to act. Now's the time to learn! Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes in illustration, photography, film. Cut! Actor Jerry, baby, you forgot the most important part. And that's that Skillshare costs $10 a month. I mean, look at me. I took a class in low-budget filmmaking by Maddie Brown, and I turned out to be a pretty good director. Wow, thanks, Director Jerry. Don't mention it, Actor Jerry. And better yet, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description below and sign up get 2 free months of premium service absolutely free. So head on over to Skillshare.com or click the link in the description. Okay, people, back to B2B. Let's go. So first off, I know a lot of electric car technology, and the lingo that goes with it can be foreign to people. So I'm gonna be using the Model S to help better understand and appreciate what Lucid is doing. Now, having said that, there is no one magic component on the Air that helps it achieve its 517-mile range. It's a combination of advancing the technology in multiple departments. And one of the less obvious parts of the Air that helps it go further is the motors. Now, there's a variety of electric motors out there, but Lucid went with a permanent magnet synchronous motor. And they did that because they're super efficient compared to, say, the more traditional induction motor. And that's what Tesla was using up until the Model 3 came out. Now, there are 2 parts to all electric motors. You got a stator, that is the stationary part of the motor, and then you have the rotor. That's the part that rotates and produces torque to move your wheels. And you have coils made out of a conductive wire running through the stator housing. And when current from a battery is supplied to them, those coils produce a magnetic field. And when you phase that current going into the coils, you create a rotating magnetic field. And that is basically the principle that allows all these electric motors to work. Now, with a permanent magnet synchronous motor, its rotor has permanent magnets affixed to it. So the rotating magnetic field of the stator will interact with the permanent magnets on the rotor. It's like a donkey carrot situation. To get the donkey moving, you gotta dangle that carrot just ahead of him. And then once he gets running, you let him eat it, and now he's on a full sprint. So when a permanent magnet starts off, the magnets on the rotor are just behind the magnetic field created by the coils. Then once they lock into place, they become synchronous, hence the name permanent magnet synchronous motor. And this is a super efficient type of electric motor. One of the reasons they are more efficient is because they have less loss due to resistance compared to an induction motor. Now, induction motors, they don't have permanent magnets on their rotors. They use coils that are induced by the magnetic field of the stator. And because there's more wires in the motor, there's more resistance. And when you have more resistance, you have more heat. And when you have more heat, your motors are less efficient. Not only are the Lucid Air motors more efficient, they have a smaller form factor. So in fact, because they take up such little space, they can combine the inverter, the transmission, the differential, and the motor into a single package that's right under 164 pounds. Now, I weigh 185 pounds, so just imagine, take my arms off, they're pretty weak, they're about 10 pounds each, so that's right about 165 pounds, and squish me down into about the size of a roller bag that you could carry on a flight. That's how tiny they are, pretty small. Now, each drive unit on the Lucid produces 670 horsepower with a density at around 23 horsepower per liter. Because these units are so small, they have the ability to put 3 of them inside the chassis of the Air. But permanent magnet motors, they're nothing new. They've been around for a while. Lucid pushed the technology to increase their efficiency even more by cooling down the windings in the stator. Like I mentioned, the wires carrying current in the motors, they get hot. And a hilarious thing happens when you heat up a wire. The resistance in that wire also increases. And a greater resistance means it's harder for those electrons to do their job. It reduces efficiency. When we apply a voltage to a copper wire, for example, the electrons move through the wire, and that's called current. Now, if we look at just a single electron as it moves through the wire, each time it hits a copper ion, it loses energy. And this energy is transferred to that ion it just hit, causing the ion to vibrate. Now, if we multiply this by the billions of electrons hitting those billions of ions, those vibrating ions make it hard for the electrons to flow through it. A byproduct of all those ions vibrating is heat. So the more current, the more vibrations, which is more heat, the harder it is for electrons to pass through. That's more resistance. And you can think of it like this. Okay, you're in the club and you want to get from the VIP section to the dance floor. Got DJ Felipe, he's got a Shaggy tune on, so naturally, no one's on the dance floor. It's an easy stroll for you to get out there. But once you get on the floor, DJ Phil switches it up and plays some Juvenile, back that ass up. So naturally, the dance floor gets crowded. The DJ, he turned up the heat. You look over at your bros over at VIP and you tell them to come on over. But it's hard now. There's a ton of asses vibrating, making it pretty difficult for them to push through. That is exactly what is happening in that copper wire. So Lucid, they did something cool. They developed a special way to cool the part that gets the hottest, and that's the coils. And there are a few ways you can cool electric motors. You can just wrap the motor in some sort of cooling jacket. You can put passages inside the metal housing and pump cooling through that. But no one has been able to do what Lucid does. They developed an axial jet cooling manifold that butts up to the copper wire windings and allows for an almost direct contact to the wire. And by cooling the wires as directly as possible, they're able to reduce the amount of heat, thereby decreasing the resistance in the wire, increasing their efficiency. But permanent magnets, they're not perfect, okay? They're not like Zach Job and his perfect baby blue eyes. They got a couple of little flaws, and one of them is called cogging torque. Now, cogging torque is the resistance of the motor when you're not putting power to it. If you take an induction motor and you spin it by hand, it'll freely spin for a long time because there are no permanent magnets interacting with the iron stator. Now, doing the same experiment with a permanent magnet motor and the rotor will quickly come to a stop. That is what's called cogging torque. So engineers, they get fancy, okay, and they try to battle this phenomena. They use a combo of induction motors and PM motors to get the best of both worlds in terms of performance and energy efficiency. But what Lucid did was tackle the problem at the source. They developed a permanent magnet motor with very little cogging torque, about a third of what you'd normally see in a similar design. So how did they do that? Well, Peter Rawlinson wouldn't tell me. We're buzzing all, but he's got to keep his secrets. You know, I got to keep one. You better tell me, Pete. So if they gain so much efficiency in the motors, well, what about the part of the car that most people associate being able to go further on a single charge? The battery. A quick and dirty way to increase your range would be to simply add more batteries. Peter calls it dumb range because it's dumb to add more weight. But Lucid has a bunch of smarties, so they focused on taking the technology and making it more efficient. And one of the ways they did that was by using a high voltage battery. Now, a quick little refresher to help remember the difference between voltage and current and how it relates to power is to look at water in a pipe. Now, voltage is like pressure that pushes water through the pipe. And current, on the other hand, that's the electrical flow. And in our water pipe analogy, it's related to the diameter of the pipe. The larger the diameter, the more water can flow. So you can have a small pipe with a lot of pressure or a large pipe with a little bit of pressure. Lucid took advantage of this because when you use larger voltages to deliver the same amount of power, you need less current. You use more pressure in a smaller pipe. Now, Tesla in their long-range Model S uses a battery that's 350 volts. So if they were to try and deliver the same amount of power as Lucid, they would have to have almost 3 times as much current. And like when we talked about the motors, the more current you have, the more losses you incur. Double the current, you multiply your losses by 4. It's called I²R losses. And with this high voltage design architecture, it means they can use lower currents, which means smaller cables and wires, which means less resistance, less mass of material, which in the end of the day equals a more efficient vehicle. Now, Lucid uses 22 battery modules to make a complete pack for the Air. Each module produces 42 volts for a sum total of 924 volts and a package that weighs just about 1,100 pounds. Each module makes a smudge over 5 kilowatt hours, and when you get 22 of them, you get your 113 kilowatt hour battery. And this is the battery configuration that gets you 517 miles on a full charge, which comes out to around 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour. That's like miles per gallon in the EV world. This is how Lucid stacks up to a bunch of EVs out there right now. And as you can see, it tops the chart at maximizing range with its high voltage battery configurations. This technology is stripped right from Formula E. When you buy a Lucid, you're getting Formula E battery tech. All 24 cars on the grid run a Lucid battery pack made right here in the good old USA at Lucid's headquarters in Silicon Valley. Now, Peter told me that the battery pack on the Lucid is 85% mechanical engineering problem and a 15% electrical engineering problem. So instead of focusing on developing a new lithium-ion chemistry to improve efficiency, they focused on designing the pack in a mechanical sense that allows for it to be smaller and therefore lighter. But one of the main reasons for Lucid using a high voltage system is greater efficiency of the inverter and the electronics that control the motor. Now, at the heart of all these moving electrons is the power inverter. And an inverter, it does a bunch of things, but its main function is to turn direct current into alternating current. The type of current used to power your house, that's alternating current. And that's the type of current the motors in the Lucid Air need to operate. And it's called alternating current because the flow of electricity alternates direction. Now, the battery, on the other hand, it supplies direct current, the type of current that runs your Xbox controller or power drill. Direct current, it only flows in one direction. So the inverter can take direct current from the battery and turn it into alternating current by switching the current on and off really, really fast, faster than humanly possible. And the specific electrical pieces responsible for doing all that are these. They're called silicon carbide MOSFETs. Now, inside the Lucid Air are a bunch of these silicon carbide MOSFETs working together to take that 900 plus volts from the battery and supply it to the motors. And more traditional MOSFETs are just made out of silicon and aren't all that great or efficient under high voltages. But silicon carbide, man, it freaking loves voltage like I love French toast. And some smart person out there was able to figure out that it's better than plain old silicon for high voltage applications. It's not a coincidence that this is why Lucid uses them in their inverter. Now, I could go DEF-CON Nerd Stage 3 right now and talk about breakdown field and thermal conductivity and wider band gap, but that might bore the absolute shit out of you. So I'll just say that these little suckers are better. I did a lot of research on them, and unless you're really into MOSFETs, I'll spare you the nerdy details and summarize it. They allow the inverter to operate more efficiently. I know, I'm a broken record here, but that's all that Lucid cares about, is being as efficient as possible. And they have done that with the Lucid Air. Now, just yesterday from us filming this episode, Tesla had their shareholders meeting and they came out with the new Model S Plaid saying that it's gonna have a range of 520 miles, it's gonna go 200 miles an hour, it's gonna do the quarter mile in less than 9 seconds. So who knows what's to come with all of this, but I do know this, them battling it out is only gonna be good for us. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Bumper to Bumper. Thanks for Lucid for bringing us down and having the CEO. I got to talk to the CEO of a car company. Dude, that's crazy. Not everyone gets to do that. So thank you guys so much. Follow us here at Donut on Instagram at Donut Media. Follow me at Jeremiah Burton. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.